I'm going to pause for a second and send you off to a second one of your polls. And while we're going through this, and hopefully it'll come up in a second, we're going to ask Kaya Henderson to come up and join us. And then after this poll, we'll introduce Ms. Henderson. I would like to introduce Kaya Henderson, that I'm sure many people in this room know very well. She served as Chancellor of DC Public Schools since November 2010. And under Chancellor Henderson's leadership, DCPS has become the fastest improving urban school district in the country, and after decades of decline. And she has seen 4 consecutive years of enrolment growth. Prior to joining DCPS, Chancellor Henderson was a partner at the New Teacher Project, responsible for helping urban school districts recruit and retain effective teachers. And you began your career in education as a middle school Spanish teacher in the South Bronx.
Yep.
Well done. Very nice. All right, so we're going to go back to this poll question. So if you can read any of those, you can lean forward a bit if you need to. I want to get both of your impressions of the responses there. You can't read it, we can all outside the classroom, everything, rules, curriculum, every area, climate, curriculum, all areas of education that interest them or should be meaningful towards are all expected to learn from. Kaya?
I mean, I think the prevalence of the word all says a lot, right? Our young people have a lot to say. They are thinking a lot about all of the things that affect them. They spend the vast majority of their time in school, and we don't trust them enough. We don't believe in them. We don't think that they have valid experiences and opinions. And, we reject that at DCPS. In fact, we invite our young people. 2 years ago, we were thinking about how to make high school a more engaging experience for our young people. And we're required in our budget work to do community engagement. And so we go out and we ask parents and all of these things like what should be in the budget. And I decided we needed to ask high school students what should be in the budget. If we are going to spend money, what will we spend it on? And so I asked 2 people from every high school to come and talk to me about what they wanted to see in the budget. And resoundingly, what they said is, we want more foreign language. We want more electives. We want money for student government, because when we make decisions, then we can't actually act on them, right? We want more art and music and PE. And so literally we built a budget. They asked for more AP classes and more rigor. And so we built a budget based on what they told us. We required schools to offer more AP classes. We required school to offer at least 20 electives, because for me, it's as important to develop our students' talents as it is their test scores. And how do we develop their talents? But by allowing them to explore a bunch of different options. When we add money for athletics, we don't do it based on what sports we think. We survey the students and ask them, what new sports do you want to see? And those are the sports that we add to athletics. And I think that conveys to our students that they matter. When you're willing to put your money where students tell you to put the money, that's a whole different ballgame. That's not just, I read your survey and here's what I'm going to do. So I think we have to get back into the business of trusting our brilliant, amazing young people.
No, that's wonderful. Do you have any responses to this?
Yeah, the one piece I didn't see up there, but it speaks right to what Kaya's talking to. One of the things we do with the schools that we're working with, we have kids on the search committees. That doesn't mean this is a candidate, you're going to meet with a group of students. This is like 2 kids on the search committee. And I got to tell you, it's one of the most powerful things we've done, because when I look at the schools, when we talk about changing cultures, it's the staff that moves that agenda along. Having a student on a search committee is the most powerful thing we have. I mean, I lovingly call them the crap detectors, because here's the thing, I've got kids saying to these teachers that come in, I've sat on these interviews obviously with the kids, and the kids will ask the teacher, like, I hate whatever the subject is, I hate the subject you teach, what do you do with a kid like me? And within a nanosecond, you know if this teacher is real, because they'll do this. They'll start looking around the room, or they'll direct the answer to one of the adults and skip right over the kids, rather than going to the kids. Well, the first thing I would do would ask you why you'd hate this class when you don't even know anything about it yet. And all of a sudden, I see these students on these committees, and they're the most insightful, because, Kaya, to your point, we trust them, and we're giving them responsibility. and they rise to the occasion.
All the time.
I just, all the time, the teachers I'm seeing, kids have something to teach us, but we've got to be willing to learn.
That's right.
And act on it as well.
We'll act together on it, and I think that's the key. And I think, Kaya, that's what you were talking about, is this notion of asking kids their opinions, coming up with an idea, but it's not us doing things at them, but it's with them. What are you taking responsibility for? You want to make these changes? We're going to do them together. Yeah.
Okay. So one thing you've been doing, and we're going to talk about the student surveys now in DC, because DCPS has always been in the news, both locally and also nationally, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to get out of.
Spotlight.
Exactly. We're in a bubble, but a spotlight at the same time here in DC. But under your leadership, you've recently brought in student surveys, which have incorporated the student opinion back into the teacher evaluation system. And I came across this as part of the Kojo Nandi show that you were on just recently and discussed it. And they introduced it as such. They said earlier this year, DC Public Schools announced an update to its evaluation system for teachers. The most controversial change, the addition of student surveys. And starting this fall, teachers won't be the only ones handing out grades. So I'm going to put it to you, why did you feel having student input into teacher evaluations was important?
So students are the primary clients that teachers serve, right? And we trust our college students to evaluate their professors at the end of any course. Why don't we trust our high school students? Why don't we trust our middle school students? Why don't we trust our upper elementary school students if we can create surveys in ways that are objective and have them ask about the learning environment and what's happening in their classroom? Ultimately, it goes back to this trusting our young people. And there's all of this research out there that shows that student survey results are highly correlated to teacher effectiveness. They are the crap detectors. They know who's a good teacher and who's not. And, you know, the trepidation that teachers have is, well, if I'm hard on them, they're not going to grade me well. It's not a popularity contest, right? And our kids are not stupid. We can ask them questions beyond, do you like your teacher, right? The questions are, when you're struggling, does your teacher help you over the obstacle? Does your teacher want you to learn? Is the classroom environment a place where you feel supported? It's just rank it 1 to 10, right? And our students are very capable of sharing those experiences. And I think that it makes teachers accountable to students in a completely different way. In fact, all of the research says that the very best teachers, the teachers who rank highest on student surveys, are the ones who are the most challenging. Why? Because it communicates to students, I think you can do it, right? When we set high expectations for students, they rise to the occasion. And students recognize when teachers believe in them in that way.
It's not just making them more accountable, it's changing the relationship
Absolutely.
you have between the teacher and the student. It's raising the importance of that student in that relationship, because previously it was just someone who would be getting content or receiving an education, let's say. And now you're putting them on a higher playing field and saying, you are the customer, you're the client.
They are
we
the
need
customer.
to interact, we need to form this relationship.
And I have a responsibility to meet your needs.
Yeah.
And that's a different dynamic in the teaching profession.
Okay, I'm going to skip over this one because this one talks about, we've got a couple of audio clips from the Kojo Nandi show.
Okay.
So this one here talks also about the student cabinet, and I think you talked about it a little bit before about you're getting more input of student voice at the district level as well. So these are a couple of audio clips that I got off the Kojo Nandi show from WAMU, and we'll see if this one works.
At DCPS, we're doing more than just teaching kids to read on grade level or do math proficiently. We believe our mission is to teach them to be leaders, and that means teaching them that their voice matters, that they have important things to say. And that's why, as you know, and as many of your listeners know, the chancellor has a student cabinet, which weighs in on policy decisions, budget decisions. Last year, they said that they wanted to have more AP classes, more elective classes at the high school level, and that's exactly what we did in response to the things that they had to say. So this work is just an extension of that same commitment to student voice.
How have the teachers...
And we'll get on to his question afterwards about how the teachers responded to some of this. But I want to ask you, can you outline some of the roles beyond what you've already said and the influence these students are having? and also whether you're seeing any benefits across DCPS.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, from the very beginning, when we set out to create a strategic plan for DC Public Schools, we asked parents and students, what are your hopes and dreams? I could have sat in a room with a bunch of consultants and my people and come up with a strategic plan, but I wanted to know what my stakeholders, both families and students, wanted. And we did a hopes and dreams campaign. What do you hope DCPS looks like 5 years from now? What do you dream about for your kid or for yourself? And we put boxes in schools so that kids could actually respond. And we got over 10,000 people who said what they wanted. And we based our 5 big goals on that, right? 2 of the goals are academic. 1 of the goals is graduation rate. 1 goal is about increasing enrollment. But there's a particular goal that was really important to us based on what we heard. And that is that 90% of our students love school. And when I talk about our goals, goal 1 is this, goal 2 is this, when I say 90% of our students love school, people chuckle. And I say all the time, this is not a laughing matter, this is incredibly serious. We will only be successful if our schools are places where our kids want to be. And so, as important as it is for me to increase the graduation rate or increase the test scores, I want my kids to love being where they are every day. I am a DCPS parent, right? And so my kid spends more time in school than he does with me. And so I want him to be happy there. I want him to be investigating new and exciting things that I don't have time to do, right? I want him to go on field trips. I want him to, do extracurriculars and athletics. And so if that's what I want for my kid, then that's what I want for our kids. And that's what we put in place. And so every year, we survey our students. We literally have a goal. When I started out, only 78% of students said they loved their school. 3 years later, we're at 83%, and our goal is 90% by 2017, and we are on track. And when we look at these survey results, we literally disaggregate them by school, because what's important to kids at one school is different than what's important to kids at other schools. And we actually ask the school to come up with a plan around how they're going to address the issues that their young people raise. And we ask them to engage kids in that, to do focus groups with their kids, to talk to their kids, to dig under the survey results to make sure that they know what they're going to do. And then I put my money where my mouth is. I put money in the budget, $100 per kid, right, for you to improve your engagement. And then schools had to come up with plans that were based on the data and the both survey data and the focus groups that they conducted. And they said, look, here's our plan and here's how we're going to measure it. And only then did you get your $100 per kid, when you put in a plan and we could see how it correlated to the data. And so we saw schools then investing in field trips and college trips. We saw some schools investing in support around food because the kids hated the food, right? We saw some schools really think differently about how they engage their custodians because kids said the building is nasty and I don't like coming here, right? And so we saw a wide variety of different strategies and interventions that would have been very different if we just said, here's $100 per kid, engage them more.
Yeah. I like the way you were saying that what's good for what I want for my kid is what we want for every kid. And that should be a bottom line. That should be a mantra.
But that's not what's happening now,
it's not.
right? In fact, we program things for other people's kids. We had an $8 million, we had a year where we had to figure out how we were going to spend $8 million additional dollars, right? And so I said to my team, okay, well, what are we going to do with this money? And they said, we're going to double block reading and double block math. And I was like, I can't sit through a double block of reading or a double block of math. My crazy 9-year-old cannot sit in a double block of reading or a double block of math. Is that what you want for your kid? And one of my staff members said, no, I want my kid to play a sport, speak a foreign language, master an instrument. And I was like, well, that's what we want for all of our kids. And we took that $8 million and we put them in elementary schools to require that every single elementary school student get at least 45 minutes of art, music, PE, foreign language, and library, because that is what kids were asking for. And that's what we as parents want for our kids. And so we've got to stop. I think ultimately, in the same way that we don't trust our kids, we don't trust our teachers, we don't trust our school districts. So we say, just focus on this, just do math, just do reading. Our people can do more than math and reading at the same time.
And also schools are about more than math and reading.
Absolutely.
Dare I go back to the whole child, that we want them to be healthy and safe and engaged, supported and challenged. It reminds me of what you're talking about. Often when we give talks, we ask the audience, Imagine the child at 25. Could be your child, could be someone you teach. Turn to your neighbour and describe that child. What characteristics do they have? And they'll say things like they're healthy, they're happy, they're a leader, they're prepared, they're dynamic, they're a problem solver, they're creative, they're a citizen. Nobody says proficient at language arts. Nobody says able to pass year 8 math algebra. But that's what we put the focus on. But if that's what we want the child to be, this well-rounded, full person at the age of 25, then what the hell are we doing in schools that sends them away from that?
So I agree with that, but I want to put a caveat on it, right? Because there is an assumption that they are proficient, right? There is an assumption that all of the academic benchmarks are met. And I think that for a long time, it's questionable as to whether or not our schools were meeting all of those. But I don't think that the two things are mutually exclusive.
They're not.
I do not think that kids can't do great on tests, right, with an engaging curriculum that's interdisciplinary and whatnot. We're doing it with our Cornerstones curriculum, but it forces adults to do differently, right? It forces adults not to take the lazy way out and do one thing. It forces us to up our game in real ways. And I think states and districts and teachers haven't done that. Our kids require more than what we've been doing for the last 50 years. And they deserve for us to up our game. And I think we're not doing that.
Well, interesting, when you were talking about when we're asking the parents what their expectations are of the kids, what they want the kids to graduate with, and the students what they're expecting. You ask the teachers, it's the same response. I haven't talked to any teachers when I say, why'd you become an educator? Oh, so I could meet AYP, or I could pass a state test, or 87% of my class would pass. Now, math teachers will answer it that way, but generally speaking, but the normal teachers don't. Why they become an educator? It's because, just calm right down, because I'm going to keep talking and you're going to run out of time before you get up here. No, but it's fascinating to me, because when you talk to teachers, why they become an educator? I want to make a difference in these kids' lives. I want to show them that I care about them. And I think the very best teachers, and I hear this a lot, I never look at students as the clients. I always want to look at them as the partner. Because as a client, to me, it's like we're always doing something to them. And when I think of the teaching and learning environment and the survey questions, I haven't seen the survey, but I like the notion of not just asking students their reflection on what that environment looks like, but the reflections of themselves. Because it's not just, I need to assess the teacher, because that's what they're doing, but I also need to assess me. I need to assess other kids. And one of the interesting things that you might think about is, again, I go back to the whole point of the idea piece in there, is we've had teacher do peer observations and so on. Then we had students do observations, but not of the teacher. We had the students do observations of the kids in the classroom. What were the kids observing other kids' behaviors? And when they reported that out, it was like this enlightenment. It's like, wow, this teacher's got some issues, but holy cow, this class is brutal. And what it did, it let the students know that, like, wow, this job kind of sucks right now to be a teacher, because this one's not paying attention, this one's texting, this one's got earbuds in, you can't see because the hair's all covered up. So it's taking that, I think, that client thinking to another level, which I think you go in that direction, obviously, of this notion of, yeah, clients, yeah, I get that, but you know what, they're our partners, because this is a teaching and learning environment. It's not just a teaching environment. And as a partner, as a kid, you better take some responsibility.